sats are satya. Sats are truth. One sat is always one sat. So I would attack it from the angle of ethics aligning, yoga's ethics aligning with Bitcoin's ethics.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask a Bitcoiner 21 Questions. I'm your host, Saida Gomez, and I am joined by the lovely Heather Larson, who's helping me with my breathing.
There we go.
Heather will answer or try to answer, the 21 questions in 10 minutes about yoga and Bitcoin. How are you, Heather?
Mm-hmm. I'm great, Saida. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. Do you want to give the audience a brief intro, before we start, or do you want to go straight into it?
Absolutely. I can do a brief intro. I'm a Bitcoiner, a yoga teacher. I love to talk about Bitcoin and yoga. So you've now brought together all of my special interests all in one. And a lot of people know me from Radio Detox or Soapbox Sessions. My day job is working in a variety of Bitcoin and Nostr, tech startups, from Soapbox to Wrigley. You even find me on Lightning News. I know I'm forgetting one. Oh, Runster. So, keeping with the fitness, health, and wellness that we Bitcoiners love so much.
Amen. Okay, so you know the deal. 21 questions, 10 minutes. I'll read the first question and then I'll start the timer. And I almost forgot. Before we start, of course, there will be the Cashu eCash QR code somewhere popping up. And the first person to spot it and scan it will get the 2100 sat. So good luck.
Awesome.
And we shall start. First question. Have you ever talked about Bitcoin in a yoga class or workshop?
Yes, I have. It just kind of organically happened once because I was playing some music on Wave Lake in a yoga class and somebody liked the music. And I said, well, that song happens to be by Ainsley Costello, a very solid Bitcoiner. And so this was I technically after class, but yes, it has happened once organically, of course. Wasn't trying to orange pill the yoga class. Wasn't trying.
If you had to explain Bitcoin to a room full of yogis using only concepts from your practice, what would you say?
I would go with the ethics and the values, the namas or yamas and niyamas. I would talk about the ethics like asteya, non-stealing, or satya, which is truth. And by the way, sats are satya. Sats are truth. One sat is always one sat. So, I don't know if the yogis would appreciate sats or satya right out the gate, but I would attack it from the angle of ethics aligning, yoga's ethics aligning with Bitcoin's ethics.
Do you accept Bitcoin for your classes?
I do. I have done that on Nostr. I have accepted Zaps for people who attended my online classes. I've always, as a Reiki master, accepted or told people I would accept Bitcoin. Nobody's actually paid me in Bitcoin for Reiki, but for yoga, yes, I can. I have Zaprite on my site. I have the traditional payment rails as well, but yes, and Bitcoiners, when you pay in Bitcoin, a 10% discount for you.
Nice. What came first for you, yoga or Bitcoin?
Chronologically, yoga. Yoga since 1996. So this is my 30th year of yoga. And for Bitcoin, we'll just say class of 2020, because that's when I got deeply into Bitcoin.
What do yoga and Bitcoin have in common?
The ethics and the values. But there's probably about 21 different things I can come up with as far as both are misunderstood, both are ethically aligned. There's so much that Bitcoin and yoga have in common. But I would say the ethics, the low time preference, the tendency towards study, being deep rabbit holes that I will go down and never get out of. Bitcoin and yoga are definitely aligned. And I think Bitcoiners are definitely aligned to yoga as well. I should give it a try.
So in my experience, most yoga teachers are women, but most Bitcoiners are men. You exist in both spaces. What is that like?
Oh, it's hard. I exist at Soapbox. We're very developer oriented, and in Nostr devs, a lot of men. Mostly men, Bitcoiners, a lot of men. These are male heavy spaces. I've always worked in male heavy spaces though, from radio and records, rock and roll. I think the only women intense fields I've been in have been, social work and yoga. And so it's trying to stand out and stand up for myself as a woman. I'm on a tear right now where I'm trying to ensure that when I do a Bitcoin event, if I'm speaking on a panel and bringing another woman with me, or setting up women to be on panels, even if I'm not there. We did this in DC for Runster. We had Ainsley Costello, Catherine, and Ella Huff on a Gen Z Women in Bitcoin panel. I didn't have to be there. I didn't have to be on the panel. Gloriously, David Tarr, my friend, an amazing musician, did that panel for me in DC. So that's kind of my point. My sticking point right now is
what did you think when you first heard of Bitcoin?
My first thought about Bitcoin was that it was finance and trading. Trading was my first thought, and I thought that it was like you needed a Robinhood app to do. And really, that was my first impression of Bitcoin. It was very wrong, but I think a lot of people probably share that too.
What does financial sovereignty mean to you?
Financial sovereignty means independence. I think for women, especially, to be able to have money that you can access and a husband or partner cannot access or does not know about. I think that's been a huge issue for myself in the past and many women that I know. That is the sovereignty issue.
What would you say to a yogi who avoids Bitcoin because they believe it's bad for the environment?
Ooh, yeah, that is the FUD speaking right there. But, you can't tell somebody that. So, I would encourage people to study the work of Bitcoiners like Margot Payas and Daniel Botten, people who really understand energy and mining and how, Bitcoin mining is actually a net positive for energy. And it's not what people think it is. It's not the stigmatized version of just FUD that people think it is.
What's your favorite asana?
Ooh, I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna say child's pose. It's not one of the fancy ones. It's just you're practicing yoga if you get on your mat and get in child's pose and you breathe.
Yeah,
it's that easy, and also that hard.
So there are a lot of posts about manifesting in the wellness space, and Bitcoin is about proof of work. How do you reconcile the two?
Well, in yoga and the sutras, they're actually, there is something to the manifesting idea, but it's not called manifesting per se. It's called bhavana, which is calling into existence. And, you still do have to do work if you want to manifest. You don't just sit there and go, I'm manifesting a Ferrari and it appears, right? You still have to actually go make the money. And I think, it's the same with Bitcoin. It's proof of work and it's energy, and it is a system of math. It's a system of science and software development if you really want to go down that rabbit hole. But both have proof of work, and you can't fake the funk. You can't fake Bitcoin. You can't copy it, you can't. And the same thing with yoga, show up, do the work, you do your best, and you detach from the result. And the same is true with Bitcoin. And sometimes it's going to be up, sometimes it's going to be down. You just have to chill with it. Just got to ride the wave.
Yeah. So how does actually proof of work look to a yogi?
Proof of work comes in, I think, a feeling, which I guess is not the best form of proof of work, but it's you begin to feel different. You begin to transform. Bitcoin does this to you too. You begin to feel a transformation. Maybe you're standing taller. Maybe you're breathing deeper. Maybe the space, between these interrupting thoughts, maybe that space is broader, deeper as well, and maybe there's just more peace comes to be, and that's what's going to bring that to you.
Is there an asana or posture viewers can do if they feel stressed about money?
That's a good one. I would say child's pose, because you're going to lay your head on the floor. It's kind of like cuddling into yourself, and you breathe. That is something you can do. Or you could also just sit up straight in a staff pose. Align the spine, breathe deeply, and center. And both of these can be centering and very grounding.
How has the fiat mindset impacted the way we practice yoga?
Oh gosh, let's start with Lululemon $100 yoga pants. Yoga has become so much about it. We can blame Instagram for this. It's it's so much about aesthetics or looks or how we look in the pose, and it's very nice when you find a yoga studio that does not have mirrors. You don't need mirrors to practice yoga. You don't need fancy pants. You don't need a whole bunch of things. Like I started out with yoga with a $5 book and a very bad fitness mat. And here I am 30 years later, still in love with yoga because I connected with it on that level of feeling like it changed me. It doesn't have to be expensive retreats and expensive, fiat yoga pants.
Yeah. What's the biggest misconception about yoga?
The biggest misconception about yoga is that it's fitness, because it is so much more than that. It is an ancient system, thousands of years old, that if you practice it, it can bring you peace. It can bring you alignment. It can bring you whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And although Bitcoin's only 17 years old, it's kind of the same. Whatever you put into Bitcoin is what you're going to get out of it.
How do you manage Bitcoin's volatility?
Oh man, I don't want to look. No, I actually I have the price action on my screen every day, so I'm aware of it, right? I'm gonna see it one way or another, or Bitcoin Twitter is gonna let me know, or Nostr is gonna let me know what the price is doing. So I just kind of go, okay, I'm in this for the long haul.
Well, that's time. That's 10 minutes. However, we did have a few glitches, so I'm going to add a few seconds onto the clock. We're going to add about, I'm going to say 20 seconds onto the clock. Okay. The question we're on currently is Bitcoin's volatility. You may continue with the answer, or we can move on to question 17.
Okay, let's move on to 17. See, I knew I couldn't do it in 10 minutes. Okay. I'm wordy.
But your answers are really good, and I think that they're super helpful. So an additional 20 seconds added to the clock, and I'll have to read quickly. Okay, so starting, and what's harder to do, self-custody or a headstand?
I'm going to go with headstand. Well, both. Headstand has to do with fear. Self-custody pretty much, I think, just has to do with taking action.
The wellness industry is expensive. How can we build a wellness practice and save in Bitcoin at the same time? That was a long question. The alarm just went off again.
Oh my gosh, well, I can answer the question. Okay, so how can we save in Bitcoin?
Okay, so the block is unconfirmed. Just so we did this with Anuja as well. The block is unconfirmed. You're going to see, like in the episode, it'll go unconfirmed, but we will continue. And I didn't mention this for the full interview, but there is a 12-word seed phrase that the audience can try to find. We will go over time again with this. We'll get through the rest of the questions, and there will be a seed word clue somewhere in here. So audience, stay watching because you're going to want this clue so that you can eventually swipe the wallet with the 21,000 sats. Awesome. Let's resume. Ready?
Ready.
Okay, so I'll read the question again. The wellness industry is expensive. How can we build a wellness practice and save in Bitcoin at the same time?
Ooh, begin where you are. Again, it's not about the Lululemon pants. It's about how can I do yoga? How can I stay fit and be well? And meeting yourself where your finances are at. You don't need the stress of overextending your finances and spending beyond what you can afford. I do have a friend, excuse me. I do have a friend who spent about $100,000 on her wellness. And she was able to cover it. And it was something that she had been through something and her health and wellness had badly suffered. And she said, this is an investment in myself and I'm doing it. And she just had that firm belief, that bhavana, that calling in or manifesting that I'm going to spend what it takes on my wellness. So that's like one, it's a mindset. Where you do that. And like for me, I've not gone that route. I've been like, let me live within my means because I'm on a stack sats. Like
Yeah.
maybe I don't need a chair, but I do need a meditation cushion. So it comes down to the, economic trade-offs that we all face. But certainly you have to find a balance between putting your wellness first and also, putting your stacking first for the long term and just kind of breathing into it.
Yeah.
Again, it's always breath, right? Breathing into it and going, okay, I can stack sats and I can meditate
Yeah.
because, to be honest, breathing is free. Sitting down and deep breathing and trying to, bring it down to 6 breaths a minute. If you can do that, you're breathing, you're meditating, you're practicing yoga. It's that simple. That is free. And I've also been able to offer in the past, I've been offering, online yoga classes through Nostr, and anybody could attend. There was no gatekeeping, and if people wanted to send me sats afterward, they could send me sats afterward on Nostr. So, I think that's a powerful way to do yoga, where it's the people who
Yeah.
participate, give you, the value that they perceive that they received. And so, if people spent a few sats on me, great, and if not, they got to have yoga in an affordable way.
Yeah. What does life look like after practicing yoga and stacking sats for a few years?
Ooh, it's a shift, right? It's a mindset shift. It's a calmness and an optimism that I think that you don't get if you're engaged in fiat world or fiat fitness. Which I, refer to fiat fitness as like the very centralized form of fitness. If you're part of a big gym or big fitness conglomerate,
Yeah.
whereas yoga, you don't need to do that. That's not the way of yoga to have a McDonald's version of yoga, and then
Yeah.
Bitcoin changes you as well. And I think both things change your values and change your priorities in a more wholesome way to where there should overall be less stress when you kind of adopt
Yeah.
this way of life where it's like, I am saving in the hardest money possible. Like I have a future now and I'm confident in that. And I'm also
Yeah.
practicing yoga, so that's a change as well.
What is Nostr?
Nostr is notes and other stuff transmitted over relays, and it's an acronym for a protocol, protocols versus platforms. But Nostr is many things. Nostr is basically rebuilding the internet so that it is open source and free. You can join at ditto.pub. That's what we made at Soapbox, which is a little bit beta, but it's kind of the super app where we can pull every aspect of what you might want online into kind of one thing. If you want video, if you want pictures, if you want articles, if you want to share like Twitter, but it's uncensorable, and that's the magic of Nostr. It's also compatible with the rails of Bitcoin and Lightning. And that's why there's a lot of Bitcoiners on Nostr. But Nostr is whatever you want it to be. And I know that sounds very generalized and generic, but it is the answer to a closed internet where you can be deplatformed, where you can be censored.
Yeah.
But it's like if you pull together Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and everything else, and just gave it one login, one profile, and you get to take your audience with you for the rest of your life. You don't have to move between them. You have one community and many possibilities, and that's, I guess, the best way to put Nostr. It's a more sociable, wholesome, and free internet experience. It's just kind of rebuilding the internet to what it was supposed to be in the beginning.
Yep. And last question, do you practice more yoga during a bear market or the bull market?
Ooh, well, you need it more in the bear. I don't know if it's about practicing more. I think it's about practicing differently. I think, when things feel bearish,
Mm.
I can tend to go more towards philosophy, more towards the sitting and meditation, more towards the nourishing practices, where when it's bullish, I get into that hype, I get into that energy, that high energy, and then maybe I want the vinyasa, then maybe I want that challenging practice that's going to make me sweat, because I'm feeling bullish, and sometimes it flip flops, but the practice you have depends on many factors, the seasons of your life, and yes, bull and bear markets as well.
Yeah. Well, there we have it. 21 questions about Bitcoin and yoga. Thank you once again, Heather. Can you remind people where they can find you?
Find me on Nostr, ditto.pub. You'll find me there. The username is Heather Larson, or Make Songs Longer, because, if what happened in 1971 hadn't happened, we would have longer songs. Songs have gotten shorter over the years. So there's that. There's my website, destinyarchitecture.net. If you want to read my 21 ways Bitcoin and yoga are aligned, we've got that there for you. And Twitter is writer Heather L. And we'll also see you in Las Vegas at the end of the month.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you, Saida. Yeah, hit me up anytime. Questions about yoga or anything, always around. You know how to get a hold of me.
I will. Thank you.
Unclench your butt cheeks, because you don't know you're doing that either. And it could be your jaw. If you're well practiced at unclenching your butt cheeks, let's go to the jaw. Unclench your jaw. Where are we holding the stress state? Unclench everything. Wherever you're holding, let go.
Let go, but I don't want to fart on air,